Hello, heathens and heretics. This is Lilith. I'm here with Renee, and we are Veritas Voices. I certainly hope you're doing well today in the wonderful world of the global pandemic. Yay! How are you doing this week, Renee?
I'm doing good so far. Yeah, I'm surviving and I'm doing the best I can to keep myself distracted. Yeah, I guess we all have to get through this period of our lives, and what better way to distract ourselves than with horrendous articles concerning the Christian world?
Oh, yes, yes. Now, we are equal opportunists, but it's really just the Christians that we've come across this week being extra horrible. We'll be sure to tell you when someone else is horrible and we notice it. But in fairness, we can only cover so many articles in our headlines from hell episodes. We typically go for 3. So if there's anything specific you want us to cover, send it in. It's funny, actually. When people ask me how I'm doing, I have the urge to respond just with that the line from Monty Python and the Holy Grail when they're going around, bring out your dead, and the guy's like, I'm not dead. But I
Yeah,
feel like
that's
I feel like, how are you? I'm not dead is possibly not quite a sufficient reference for people to know what I'm saying. So um, if I say that, you don't panic. I'm just being a Python nerd.
yeah,
As you do.
yeah. I would say we go right ahead and cover the first article that we
Oh,
wanted.
you're right. You're right. Of course. Well, for those of you who tuned in to our last Headlines from Hell episode, we were talking about Kansas and their churches getting all pissy because, of course, they couldn't hold services in the middle of a pandemic to kiss their neighbors and
Yeah,
frickin' shed between each other. And apparently, courts agreed. So now it's Kentucky's turn.
yeah,
Kentucky, for those of you who do not remember, is the home of the abomination known as the Ark Park, which is a
oh,
large boat-shaped facade on a building that is supposed to be the real Ark and is full of boxes and a few fake animals and a fuck ton of placards. Apparently, the Christian Disneyland for creationists is just going through and looking at some stuffed animals and reading a ton of placards on the wall. Go team.
yeah. Well, seems like the narrative that they typically go for the Christians. When it comes to these issues, namely Christian persecution, it seems to have success since in Kentucky, Christians fight for the right to hold church services nowadays, even though the pandemic is going on. And there's no doubt about it that this will not reduce the number of infections in America at all. In fact, it will very probably make it worse. A
Well,
lot
the
worse.
disturbing thing is that the Kentucky governor actually put a temporary ban on mass gatherings, which is the right fucking thing to do during a pandemic, people. But a federal judge, and again, this is a big problem with the Trump administration because the puppeteers behind it are all these fascist, hyper evangelical dominionist Christians, and they've
Yeah,
been sticking their judges in at the federal level everywhere. It's not just Kavanaugh and SCOTUS. So this federal judge blocked the temporary ban on mass gatherings, opening the door for a hell of a lot more in-person church services. I mean, Christians at the Maryville Baptist Church became furious when police officers placed warnings on cars because they held an in-person service in April
yeah,
and said that it was analogous to Japanese Americans being placed in internment camps
yeah,
because having to watch TV, watch your church on TV at home, is the same as being dragged from your home and thrown in an internment camp.
yeah. I mean, how can anyone disagree that this is not analogous? I don't get it.
Yeah, clearly. Jesus Christ. It's kind of funny. There's this weird persecution narrative. I know you never lived in it, but they adore the idea of being persecuted so much. And they've had, like, I remember being told that Christians from other countries where things were harder for Christians would pray for North American Christians to have the gift of persecution so that they would, have their faith strengthened by it. So there's this weird thing where they want desperately to be persecuted because it means they're special, but they don't
Yeah.
actually want to suffer any inconvenience from it.
I mean, personally, I haven't lived the Christian persecution because I'm not very much surrounded within a super Christian world. But as it happens, I've seen God's Not Dead in number one and number two. So yeah, I
Yes,
am.
the oh my God, we're being so persecuted. Someone disagreed with us.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's lovely, truly. I can't even.
yeah,
Yeah, that's always very fun. Unfortunately, this particular church won the exemption they sought, but only for their church. But then there was a different lawsuit filed by the Tabernacle Baptist Church. We're going to include the link to the Friendly Atheist blog on Patheos, where he's sort of compiled the facts from the news articles here. Apparently, the district judge thought that they didn't act maliciously, or that the governor, pardon me, didn't act maliciously, but his restraining order failed to include a compelling reason to limit the right of people for gathering for church. Because, the spread of a virus that might kill you, and you might shed it all over and kill thousands of other people because you couldn't stand not to be seen going to church for your fucking ego, is not a compelling reason.
yeah. Obviously not. And I mean, I think it's obvious why people shut down the churches. I think the, does it really need to be the case that you need to include, well, because of coronavirus, into the document in order for you to be justified in demanding that churches are closing? I mean, if you haven't heard it by now, there's a pandemic going on. Isn't that sufficient reason?
No, of course not, because you see, okay, well, some of them believe that the pandemic is a hoax because
Yeah,
the entire world, including China, starting with the disease, and Italy killing off a massive quantity of their population, and just everyone in the entire world is faking this so that their precious rights can be taken away. And I have to say, actually, there was one church sign. If you don't know, a lot of churches will put out signs with phrases on them, and a lot of them are incredibly stupid or incredibly awkwardly sexual in unintentional ways.
yeah, yeah.
But one was sent to us that was actually an excellent church sign, which I will include here. It was sent to us by Leon. It's Riverside United Methodist Church. Methodists are a lot less fucking creepy. And it says, "Who cares about rights if you're dead? Stay home, save lives." Which, in fairness, your rights as a corpse are significantly limited. I don't know about you. I don't personally want to be a corpse.
I mean, as a corpse, you at best have the rights of an inanimate object, which at that point you sort of are. But yeah, I think it's better to be alive and to enjoy the rights that you have while you have them. Even though you may be persecuted, it's better to be persecuted and be a martyr for Jesus than to be dead. And well, yeah,
Well, and that whole worship of persecution also brings in this narrative of, like, the Russian SS trying to make people deny their faith. Honestly, I look back at it now and I wonder how true any of these stories were, because they were so obviously serving a desired narrative. But
yeah,
it was part of that narrative to say, what would you do if someone put a gun to your head and said, you know, are you a Christian? Say you're not a Christian. Give up Jesus, blah, blah, blah. And like, I don't know how often it happened. I'm fairly certain that when things like that did happen, they were far more about like removing a potential political association than just having a belief. But which, if Christianity didn't get wrapped up in politics, it wouldn't be such a problem. But, maybe that's not the solution they want to hear. But that was the idea. You'd think, oh, I would die rather than give up my faith. And so they see every little inconvenience that doesn't recognize them as being somehow superior to everybody else by virtue of their Christianity as being a step towards having a gun put to their head and dramatically dying for their faith, which is just completely insane and a totally unfeasible way to deal with reality, where, things change and different things are of different levels of severity and inconveniences exist. And it's not because you're so special. The entire world has conspired against you, you special, special fucking snowflake.
Yeah. And really, the Christian persecution, and I've heard this within a YouTube video, it's sort of a code word for Christians getting away their privileges taken away and people getting treated more fairly. In other words, Christian persecution is another word for equality.
Yeah, I mean, that's not obviously how they think of it, nor is it how they initially intended it. But when you make anything that might threaten your sense of superiority and just see it in the light of someone putting a gun to your head, then yeah, that's exactly what it turns into. Oh God, there was this video when I was young. I was a kid. It was this, I think it was a music video for like Petra or something. No, it was, I don't remember what it was from. It was associated with something. I just remember the video itself, and you can find it on YouTube. It's this like futuristic thing where this man is talking to his son, and he's like, it wasn't so bad this time, we used to be able to pray in schools and blah, blah, blah. And then one by one, our rights got taken away. And it's like, and then the guards are coming and the music goes to a crescendo and he's trying not to cry and he hugs his son and then gets dragged away. And all the Christians understand that he's being dragged away to die for his faith because he is such a special, dramatic pumpkin snowflake. Yes, he is. But it made no sense. You look at it now, especially as an adult, and you're like, this makes no sense. Why are they killing him just for being did he do something? And if he did something, if he was some sort of a terrorist or something, why are they leaving his kid with him for him to do this diatribe about the good old days and then be dramatically dragged off by weirdly futuristic cop guard things? It's the most ridiculous thing you can possibly imagine. But that's the narrative that, and I think it's important to be aware that that's the kind of narrative that they have been fostering.
Yeah, it is.
Even if it's completely insane. But hey, that's just me. I don't know, what do you think? Should we go to our next?
Yeah, I think we should, because I think the next article is probably a little bit less worse. So I think we should continue.
It's an individual injustice. It's still pretty stupid. You might want to grab your oven gloves if you haven't already. Apologies not for warning you at the beginning, but you should know by now. Oven gloves.
Yeah. Especially for tweets from batshit believers and headlines from hell, you will usually need your oven gloves, so always have them at the ready.
Absolutely. Always protect your face. Face protecting oven gloves. If we ever do a merch store, we're making oven gloves with the Veritas logo on it, because my God. Yeah. Oh, good Lord. Okay, well, this one is about, heaven forbid we only pick on the Protestants. This one is about Catholics.
Yeah.
An archbishop, this is interesting, this particular article on medium.com. An archbishop fires a gay teacher from a Catholic institution, but then denies that it's a homophobic act. And that's the part that I think is the most confusing. The Catholic Church being bigoted, homophobic jackasses is like, yeah, days end in Y and the sun rose in the east. What, you shocked? But this particular high school teacher who held his position for 23 years, and students and parents have been fiercely supportive of this teacher, a very popular teacher, clearly someone who did his job very, very well. And good Lord, I mean, you need good teachers. There are few enough of them as it is. But of course, they found out that he was gay, and yeah, the Archbishop's argument is quite literally, the Archbishop of Cincinnati, that discriminating against LGBTQ people is not homophobia if the discrimination has a religious basis.
Well, that's, yeah, that doesn't make any sense at all.
So it's discrimination, but it's not discrimination because Bible, Jesus, God, fuck you.
Yeah. And I would wonder if they would accept the argument if I were to make an argument in reverse. Well, my pressing religious beliefs tell me that being heterosexual is a sin. So if I fire a person just because he's heterosexual or she's heterosexual, because of my religious beliefs, would they then say, well, that's not discrimination because, well, you have that pressing religious belief and therefore it's cool?
Well, I have a pressing religious belief that Christianity is evil, which, according to this tortured logic, means that it's not actually discrimination if I discriminate against Christian people.
Yeah.
Because logic. Now, Zimmerman is actually legally married to a man. Yeah. Apparently, an anonymous person sent a copy of his marriage certificate directly to the Archbishop. Yeah. And I don't know who that person is, but fuck you.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is, of course, so he's married. He's not even engaging in the sin of fornication. Yeah. And I mean, right in the middle of all of this, and this is even with the distance learning and everything, like, this is really not the time to try and change your staff role. Certainly not for anything so innocuous as, like, existing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So dozens of students and alumni protested in the park near the school on May 1st. But because of COVID-19, they stayed in their cars, blowing their horns and playing some of Zimmerman's favorite songs, which is really, really nice. It shows that it appears decent people are willing to not endanger each other for their rights, even when they need to get something done. So that's nice.
So I'm glad that that there's at least someone standing up for the fire teacher, because it shows that even if you hold to religious beliefs, it does necessitate that you're homophobic, and there are many Christians who are, in fact, courteous and nice to gay people, and I think those are the kind of believers that we should encourage more. We should encourage more believers to be like these people, because even if you have to have religious beliefs, even if you need Jesus, you don't need to be a dick about it to other people who can't help but be gay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, like, why is it any of your business? Stop fucking about what goes on in people's bedrooms. If there's no victims, it's none of your business.
Yeah.
And of course, Mr. Zimmerman, I mean, literally all of these Christians and Catholics even are saying that he is an exemplification of everything it means to be a teacher and a disciple of God. This situation really reminds me, especially in light of the previous story and the whole persecution complex bullshit, of a tweet I saw last week that said, you'll notice that LGBTQ people are not calling it persecution and whining and crying because they can't, because they had to cancel Pride. They're not doing that because they actually experience real bigotry and an actual violation of their rights. And stay home and don't infect everyone during a fucking pandemic is not that.
Yeah.
That's just called don't be a dick. And also, I don't know if you've noticed it, but we all live here, so maybe it's in everybody's interest not to work this thing into a super virus that kills a major ton of people.
Yeah. It's.
I don't know.
I don't understand these people. As a German who has never had any experience with that kind of behavior, it's beyond me.
Well, they're supposed to put Jesus ahead of all things, which means, of course, their particular conception of Jesus, who it turns out, this is kind of what capitalism does to religion. It puts it in an evolutionary war ideologically. And so the ideas that are best at enslaving the mind survive, not necessarily the ideas that are actually true or best for people.
Yeah.
So that's fun. But I think we should share the good news, though.
Absolutely. Now, yeah.
We should probably preface this by saying we normally, obviously in Headlines from Hell, we normally have a lot of headlines that kind of suck.
Yeah.
But this particular one brought a smile to our face. And in light of the Archbishop douchebaggery, we just thought we wanted to end on a positive note for once. Because, judge a tree by its fruit and all that.
Yeah. We have gotten the shitty stuff out of the way right now, and now we are ready for some for something that can and should encourage us all. So, do you want to introduce the article?
Okay, sure. Well, this one, again, we're getting the breakdown through the Friendly Atheist. Although the original source of this, and by all means, we will include the article below, look through all the sources, but it's the actual Catholic news agency ringing the alarm bell that the United States Catholic Church is going broke.
Oh, the humanity.
I know. It's almost like raping kids and then trying to act holier than thou and fuck with everybody's private lives. It is making people hesitant to give their money to your giant gold cross wielding organization. I can't imagine why. I mean, really, it's shocking.
Personally, I don't believe in a sort of karma in a cosmic sense, but I do very much believe that what goes on comes around, and that has happened.
Chickens roost. I'm just saying. And this isn't like penny pinching believers only, although obviously with all of the winning with the current administration, I'm sure a lot of people have a lot less spending money because, of course, his tax cuts only went to people who didn't fucking need it because it just enabled them to buy a third yacht. Who the fuck needs 3 yachts? Most of these people couldn't sail if their life depended on it. Anyway.
Yeah.
And this is actually, the article is from the Catholic News Agency. The article quoted by the Friendly Atheist is from the Catholic News Agency. It's written by the editor-in-chief. And it doesn't say the church might or may or could be going broke soon. Warning. It is going broke. It is going fucking broke. Basically, the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolic estimates that Catholic families registered in a parish specifically give an average of $10 each week in offertory. And
Yeah.
that's been on the decline since the 2018 sexual abuse scandal. Because apparently, the one in Pennsylvania was a major turning point as opposed to the one in Boston, 15 years prior? How? I don't know. They just keep having rashes of all the rape popping up and just all of it.
Your organization being mainly known for raping little children, it doesn't seem to do the business any favor.
Yeah, you'd almost think people object to having their children raped.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and of course, this prompted widespread frustration with the bishops among active Catholics, which is good and completely just. And just to be clear, the frustration is not that there were pedophile priests. If it had just been that, you could say, oh, there were some bad apples, there were some malicious people who used the authority of the church because they were bad and evil. And, that might be plausible. Pedophiles are definitely bad people.
The outrage is mainly about the Catholic Church pretty much covering it up.
Oh, not just pretty much. In the recent Philadelphia scandal, for example, the Archbishop of that diocese had a key on his person physically at all times. It was the only key to the room where they kept the files of all of these complaints, including who had been accused, who by, how many times, where they had moved them to avoid difficulties, and not moved them to some, go to a monastery and flog yourself and wear sackcloth and be penitent the rest of your life, you evil fuck. No. Other schools or what have you. Just the whole thing. This wasn't just cover up, as in we're not going to mention it. This was an active, deliberate protection of the worst kinds of criminals. And, I mean, it was on his body at all times. This is the Archbishop that's the highest person in the organization in the diocese. Seriously, that's not a few bad apples. That's an endemic problem in the leadership. That's taking the worst possible response.
In order to stay with the metaphor, it's not just a few bad apples, it's an entire fucking garden.
Yeah. Full of, basically trees that produce poisonous apples. Yeah, except the orchard caretaker takes the poisoned apples and donates them to schools. I'm sorry, I'm not a big fan of the Catholic Church. I can't imagine that shows it all, but full disclosure and everything.
Yeah.
Anyway, but the point is, we've all known this about the Catholic Church for many years, and wouldn't you know it, they're going broke.
Yeah. One thing which I found sort of funny about the Catholic, about the debate between Hitchens and Stephen Fry versus pretty much the guys from the Catholic Church and
the QI debate.
Yeah, and Stephen Fry sort of made a comment sort of mocking them, from the panel of the Catholics. Well, we knew they would talk about child rape and condoms and homosexuality, and then he said well, it's almost like a burglar in court. Well, I knew that they would bring up that mugging and that burglary.
Oh yeah.
I never mentioned that I bought my father a birthday present.
Yeah. Yes. Oh yeah. Oh my God, that was brilliant. It was yeah. Oh, I knew they'd bring up all this. Yes, they do. Jesus. Yeah,
because it's important. The Catholic Church may have done one or the other good thing, but you have raped children. That's kind of important. Can we maybe talk about that?
That's kind of a big deal. And most people who are not the fucking devil have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Wild thought. Although I have to admit that it was just also very funny what Hemant Mehta had to write in this article when he quotes a great deal from the original article. But he also talks about how ridiculous it is. The budgeting, it's like, oh, this much for maintenance of the church, and this much for the salaries, and this much for the blah 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 blah, and $3 million for or actually I think you had $3 billion, depending on whether you're talking about the whole church or not, for settlements for child rape. I just can't seem to budget. It puts me in mind with what George Carlin said about God. He's all knowing, all powerful, all wise, and he needs money. He always needs money.
Yeah.
Omnipotent, everything, just can't handle money.
And
it's that blind spot,
And apparently they need a huge chunk of money in order to continue covering up children being raped by priests.
And who would have thought that maybe some Catholic grandmothers wouldn't want to pay for that?
Yeah. Can't imagine why.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a mystery. Maybe it's a sacred mystery. Maybe only the Spirit allows us to understand. Unfortunately, this has meant a problem for people who are employed, laymen and lay people who are employed, like the teacher. Although, fairness, clearly that's not the reason why he was let go. I have to admit, it's frustrating for them, I have no doubt, but I really do think the less the Catholic Church has control over schools and hospitals, over education, over the right to fire people for fucking being gay, the better off everyone is. And yeah. I hope that other countries, we can take a note from this, because the way to beat them is to hit them in the pocketbook. It's not like they have any ethics. Hit them in the wallet. It's the only thing they value. Because remember, the blood of Christ always tastes better out of a golden chalice.
Yeah. Well, they care about money, and they care about bringing the Holy Spirit into children.
Yes, no child's behind left. Ugh. Well, I don't know. I just, as much as we talk about all the horrific things in the Catholic Church, which are very depressing in and of themselves, this article just cheers me up, and we record on a Monday. I know we come out with this on a Wednesday, but we're recording this on a Monday, and I kind of needed that pick-me-up for the week. So here's hoping for our listeners it helps you over hump day and gives you something to smile about, because eventually the chickens come home to roost.
Yeah. Well, I think that was it for this week, and next week we will talk about a topic again, like we have this 3-week rhythm. 1 week Battleship Believers, second week then Headlines from Hell, and next week we will discuss different topic. And what is going to be the topic, Lilith?
It's going to be about truth, something we both value, and something that I think becomes very important to understand the importance of in conversations, especially about religion. There's a lot to cover in people's different perspectives, because it's something that I think a lot of people play with, a lot of apologists play with, and a lot of people, in my interactions with atheists, I've found by and large they value truth very strongly. But it's important to think about it and think about what that means.
Yeah.
So you can defend your position well. So we'll be discussing that next week. And if you have any comments or any suggestions you'd like to add to the topic, or any future suggestions for Batshit Believers tweets or Headlines from Hell, please send them to us at Veritas Voices on Twitter, or our personal Twitter accounts are both linked from there, Phoenix_Lilith and Renevelation. You should find links to all three in the comments below, as well as, of course, all the articles we have been looking at. I think that's about it for now. I just like, comment, subscribe. If you like what you're hearing from us, or if you have certain things you want us to know or to talk about, we'd love to hear from you at any time. Also, my Patreon will be in the links below. I realize it's a rough time, but we do want to expand the show and get some good equipment together. So that's what that's for. In the meantime, I think that's everything. I am Lilith, here with Renee. And for the next week, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and reason bless.